Hello, everyone. Welcome to the WIT Network. We're so excited that you are joining us today for this really important webinar. I know many of you have Zoom fatigue, and I do too, so I feel you, but we actually have one of the highest registrations for this content today. And, that tells me that this topic, men as allies, is really, really important. And we're really excited that you're here to join us. I'm just going to start with some brief introductions for those of you who don't know me. My name is Christine Bongard, and I have the immense pleasure and privilege to serve as the president and one of the co-founders of the WIT Network. It truly is one of the most rewarding things that I have ever done, being a part of such a global community, all focused on supporting women in technology. And every day, if I have any doubt that the work that we're doing is important, I'm reminded weekly by women who reach out to me. Or I received another note this morning from somebody talking about how impactful our programming is to them. And the WIT Network, we are a global organization. We're about a little over 5,000 members around the world. I think we're in a little bit more than 53 countries now. We have to update the slide. We've had a whole bunch of new members from some other countries joining, which is fantastic. But we're here really for the sole purpose of supporting women in technology. And that means really all along their career journey life cycle, for women who are just coming into the industry and they need coaching and career guidance. Women who are mid-career looking for different opportunities to round out, their skill base, and then also women who aspire to get into more leadership positions and to the C-suite, and potentially become entrepreneurs as well. And through our programming, the impact that we're having, that is so important, especially now during this time of COVID, when people are having a harder time connecting with other people. Obviously we can't see each other in person, but through our programming they are able to get a lot of support that they need. And that, to me, even if we have to support one woman at a time, that's how we're going to do it. And I'm so proud of the work that we're doing. We have lots of different programs. If you're not a member and you want to take a look at our website, you'll see we have webinars that are educational and inspirational. We've got sales training, leadership training, technical training. We just did a couple of Azure cohorts, and we're also going to be looking at trying to do some AI training in the future. And we have mentoring circles, and we're going to have a really big International Women's Day conference coming up soon. So you can find us. We're the WIT Network. We're on all the social channels, and we actually don't try. We do a great job, our social squad, getting all the information of our events out there. And I want to real quick go through a few programs that we have coming up, because some of them may interest you. We have every quarter we do global virtual mentoring circles. And, this was actually the message I received this morning was from a woman in Spain who reached out to say, how impactful it was for her and meaningful to connect with women from around the globe about topics that are really important. And she said she just couldn't stop talking about it after she got off of the call to her family and her friends, that it meant so much to her to connect with other people. So we love for you to join us. We change the topics all the time. They're in 3 time zones, so we try to reach everybody around the globe. We've got a really great webinar coming up with Jabra, talking about women working remotely. Yes, we've been at this for just about a year, but guess what? Still not easy, still having problems, still struggling. And this is going to be a great session to try to help you and give you some support. And then we have our International Women's Day Conference. The theme for this year is Choose to Challenge. And we have Gabriella Schuster, Corporate Vice President for Microsoft, is going to be our kickoff keynote. And we have a bunch of really inspiring WIT talks, 15-minute talks. And then we have a lot of networking. So you'll get to meet people from around the world. So that's going to be fun. It's on our website. You can register there. It's open to everyone. And then lastly, I would be remiss if I didn't mention, because this webinar was open to everybody, that we would love for you to become a part of the WIT network. For $97 for an individual membership, the opportunities, the exposure, the education, the training, the networking is really, really well worth it. And for any of you who work, for a tech company that might want to become a corporate member, we have almost 50 corporate members now, all joining to work with us to try to fight for gender equity in the workplace. So all this information is on the website. Definitely, please check it out. So we're going to begin our program shortly. I'd love to hear from everybody. In the questions box, please post where you're calling in from. Because we're global, we love to see where people are from all over the world. And when our guest Tom is speaking, if you have any questions, or if something that he's talking about is really strikes you, and you want to share a thought on that, please put that in the question panel as well. We don't share anybody's names. It's, everything's held confidential. I won't call you out, but we love to hear what people are thinking about our content. And also, if you'd like to share suggestions or comments on future events, we'd love to hear what is of interest to you. So I think I covered all the housekeeping. It's my extreme pleasure to introduce Tom Harshbarger, who's a VP at Synnex. Tom is a good friend of mine, and he's a good friend of the WIT Network, and he's an inspirational leader. He's authentic. Today, he's here to be vulnerable and talk about his journey, becoming an ally for women in the workplace. And we really can't thank him enough. And this is where I get a little emotional, but, storytelling. And, a lot of people say to me, I struggle because I'm not really sure what I'm supposed to be doing. And men, will ask me, what can I do to help, or what should I do to help? And it's really hard for me, to share all that. But when a man shares, his side of the story, and things that he has tried, and maybe even in Tom's case, things that haven't worked well, right? Being really honest about it. When the storytelling is true, and that's when it rings impactful. And so I'm really hoping that each of you, men and women alike, come out of today with one or two things you can take back into your workplace, your community, and your family, and try to make change, because you will have a ripple effect. Many people say, well, what can I really do? No, in this case, you can. Each one of us changes one thing about how we speak, how we treat people, and that ripple effect will go out. So without further ado, Tom, I'd love for you to come on board and do an introduction and welcome us to the Fireside Chat today.
Cool. Thank you for having me. Just telling Christine before we hopped on that I went downstairs to get some water, and I'm fairly not animated around the house, and my kids asked why I was bouncing like a pogo stick. So excitement and nerves about coming on here. But thanks everybody for joining in. Christine, right back at you. Thank you for making yourself available to be a part of Synnex's International Women's Day. We could not be more thrilled to have you and the power of the entire network there to help educate us. And again, thanks for the opportunity and the partnership over the years. You all played no small part in my journey that we'll talk about in just a second. And ladies and gentlemen in the audience, today hopefully is going to evoke some emotional reactions. It should. If it doesn't, then we probably agree on everything and are going to stay status quo, and that's not a good thing. And just know that it's okay. You can be excited by these topics. You can have feelings of denial, optimism, acceptance, confusion. Those are all normal. And despite the fact that I'm here presenting on the topic today, I still go through those because this is not a journey where you reach the destination. I get my certificate and yep, I am recognized as an ally of women. I'm on the journey, will always be on it, and I'm as flawed as anybody else here. So with that, Christine, if you want to go ahead and pop ahead.
Okay.
So briefly, I just want to share, probably 8 minutes or so here. You go ahead and click one more, Christine. My journey, and I'm sharing this not because I or anyone else think I am awesome and incredible and I'm the role model. It's more to relate to everybody. As Christine said, a lot of flaws, a lot of cracks in the foundation of even understanding I had a role here at all. So let me take you through it a little bit. My email address will be up the whole time. I would love to engage with any of you on LinkedIn or in my inbox. You all are going to have thoughts and points of view that I couldn't have. So challenging questions, discussions, all of that, please. I want to learn more and I want to share what I can with you. So with that, yeah, I'm as Christine said, I'm with Cinex, one of Microsoft's top distributors in North America. And I'm responsible for all of Microsoft business. And I've also had the privilege, the deep privilege of being asked to be the executive sponsor for the Cinex All Up Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Council. So these issues today are ones that we are working to address and learn on, as well as every form of exclusion, from voice to pay to promotion, hiring practices, et cetera. So I'm thrilled that this fits into that bigger picture that we all need to work on to improve for our company and our world. So starting out, I grew up, and I had no idea this was even a thing at the time, what kid could, but I grew up in white privilege. It doesn't matter if I asked for it, doesn't matter if I think I didn't benefit or I did. The truth is, in general, with extenuating circumstances, if you grew up as a white male, you had a distinct advantage over everybody else, all females and any male, him, him, her, they, that was not looking like you. And there's some great books, like White Fragility is one that I would recommend everybody get and read. It's a really uncomfortable and revealing read. And while it is focused on the relations with our friends and equals who are Black, the structure of white fragility, or the structure of white privilege and how it was founded, was incredibly eye-opening. And for me, it was a starting point and kind of a light bulb. So I grew up in that bubble. In that bubble, there is not equal opportunity for women, or again, anybody that doesn't look like me, whether I wanted it to be or not. So growing up, I had unconscious bias. I grew up in a system where this was all pre-programmed. And it's easy to say that I'm faultless there. As a child, I couldn't know. But now that I know, there's a responsibility to start unwinding that all the way forward to now. This went on even through high school and my college career. I would witness bias, exclusion, mistreatment. But I thought because I wasn't participating, that I wasn't part of the problem, which is also a very common thought. And Christine, if we can bump forward one. And so this is what I'll call for me my silent observer phase. Wow, there's a lot of bad stuff going on. Some of it I recognize, but I'm not actively progressing that, so I'm not part of the problem. So I don't need to be part of the solution. Fair thinking, not broad thinking though. So leap forward when I joined Microsoft in 2003, and I spent a good 14 years there. That was really the start of the real journey for me. And Christine, if you can go one forward. So through no design of my own, I immediately landed on a team working for a woman. And very quickly, without her telling me what a great leader she was, it was very evident to me that this person was fair, compassionate, and it just opened my eyes to that silent observer, unconscious bias I didn't know I had, which is, okay, by definition, it's great that she's a female leader, and that's awesome. But in saying that, there's a scale there that I've already put her on that is by definition lesser than a man. So now I have empirical evidence and spent time throughout Microsoft working for amazing leaders. I got really lucky, and 4 of the 5 of them happen to be women. We want to get to a point when we can say I worked for great leaders and no one needs a qualification. So that was really, really important. I married my wonderful wife, Margaret, who is so much more aware around EQ and emotional intelligence. This is a big part of this journey. And so she and these other women leaders really taught me not just the power of women, that it is in fact equal, sometimes superior to men, but that I actually have a job here to not reinforce or not silently observe what I had been through. So let's go ahead and go one more. All right, so now I've reached the participant phase. I see it, I don't like it, and I'm going to say something. In this participant phase, though, I'm saying something in close circles, in trusted circles. I'm allying with women going through this, and I'm supporting them, which is a good step. But given that I was an individual contributor, not making my voice heard in larger circles, made the impact very, very minimal. There's some comfort in knowing that you have a man that understands and supports you, but it only goes so far. You know, a great hug with no Band-Aid for the cut feels good at first, but it doesn't solve the issue. So, so that started my journey there, again, with these female leaders, seeing the way they treated everybody and how they forwarded their own careers despite the ceiling that was on was just amazing. If we can go forward one more, Christine. So leaving Microsoft, meeting Christine, before I left Microsoft, and then working with her in the WIT network through a startup, and then now my time at Cinex, that really was instructive to say, okay, because I'm a man in the workforce, I actually have responsibility here to change this. And because I'm later in my career, I also have, you know, some level of voice. The title doesn't make me a better or worse person, but it does give me a bit bigger microphone. So I actually have to point out issues and drive for change. And I have to constantly learn, because having an aha moment and a great conversation is good. But to think in a conversation or a week or a month, I could fully embody what it's like to be a woman in the work world, or a Black woman, or any minority. I'll always be learning and finding things that I don't know to help me there. And then if we step forward one more, ultimately the aspiration here is to be a true champion and ally. And that is in places where I think I am now. Doesn't mean I'm perfect. And I want everyone to be really clear, the scale you see up here, or however you define your own, given the day, the time, the emotion, my frame of mind, I'm anywhere on this scale on any topic. There is no getting that certification, you passed the Ally Champion. It's work every day. I'm not perfect. And so I constantly have to pull back to try to move further up the scale. And having women that trust in you to give you that feedback is incredibly important because the direct feedback helps with direct change. One more thing to note here before we move on, and this is maybe the most important thing that you'll hear today. We as men are not here to save anybody. Women do not need our saving. The concept of chivalry is a bit outdated and a bit misguided. So women are our equals, and as I said, in a lot of places, are superiors. Thought process, all these things, the diversity of it is incredible. And so we're not here to save, we're here to help undo grooves that have been worn, ceilings that have been put in place, silences that have been creative. And it's our job, whether you're a CEO, a VP, a manager, or a worker just out of college, we've all got a chance to voice this and make change. So that's, I'd love to hear about your journeys as well. Ping me if you want to chat. As I said, I can learn from everybody on this call, so please.
Yeah,
So
I
next
would
up,
love. Oh, I'm
yeah,
sorry. I just love to say real quick, I know I love how you broke these phases down. A lot of times people, it's helpful for them, to say, well, I can't go from A to Z, but I know I can go, from A to D, in the next couple of months. And so this gives people, a chance to really challenge, well, where am I, on that journey? And did we have a poll, Tom, for this that you wanted to do?
Oh, yeah, in fact, we do.
So maybe Angela can bring up the first poll for us, and which I think really speaks to allowing people to take a minute back and say, well, where am I on this? And this goes for women as well as men. This isn't, just focused as men, because even women have a responsibility to champion and to challenge. So, Angela, do you have the poll? I don't know. Do you want to come on if you're trying to say something to me?
There it is.
Okay,
I
great.
think Christine is opening it.
Oh, I have to open
And
it?
But
no,
I'm sorry, Corinne.
it's up now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and
It's
just a
open.
quick reminder for everybody, your name and information will not be attached to your responses. This is completely anonymous.
Yes.
Absolutely. So in the background here, I'll let you know. So as people are voting, which is great, keep voting. So far, the Challenger Active Learner seems to be the uh, um, largest answer so far. Followed, well, it's a really close race. So let's see. Let's get some more people voting. Absolutely no one has voted unconscious bias so far. So that's a good thing. So we're just at over 70%. So let's make sure everybody is voting. I know you've got dual screens and such. So so let's see. So we've got. I'm going to go ahead. If you want to give one more second, and then we'll close it out.
Yeah, while you're taking those last polls in, Tom, there's a question in that says, what are a few examples of that moment that prompted you to be a participant? I don't know if you can just share one or two things real quick.
Yeah, happy to. And by the way, I love these poll results. It's awesome. And none of these are positive or negative. These are all data points to say, okay, I think I'm here. What do I have to do to get to the next level? So this is great to see. I'm excited. Yeah, and a couple points that really changed perspective for me. I mentioned marrying my wife, Margaret. She is a dynamo and a powerhouse, and is very instructive to me about fair and equal treatment. So it was rough at first because she was telling me I needed to unwire some things that were wired pretty hard, and it was hard for me to hear. But as I started, I'll just call it what it was, giving in and trying to make some of those changes, there was a pretty big revelation like, holy cow, that feels better. So I stopped feeling quite as icky, and I stopped doing things that were unconscious bias for the most part, like shutting down a woman in a meeting, et cetera. So that was one. And the second, quite honestly, if I could give a second flashpoint, it's Christine pulling me into the WIT network. Because hearing in mass, getting to listen and learn and see this powerful organization that I was kind of overwhelmed by, that really reinforced like, ooh, I can and should do a whole lot more. And then the cherry on top is I have a daughter, and she's not going to be told no because she's a woman. My job to break as much of that as I can while I'm here, so her life and my son's life as an ally can be even better, and their generation can do better than we are.
Yeah, it's interesting. A lot of people that I talk to that are mid to senior career, they're all saying the same thing. Now their children are starting to come out into the world, and they feel really passionate about making sure that, their daughters don't have the same experiences that, the women have. And also, you're right that the sons have an equally important role, and that is to break a lot of these barriers down as well. So, okay, Karine, you want to wrap us up with the poll?
Absolutely. You see the results. So I'll just go ahead and stop sharing the poll, and you guys can continue on.
All right.
Fantastic. So love to share thoughts on our responsibility and opportunity. And know that what I'm about to share, sure, some of it has come from me. Most of this has come from listening and learning. So there are countless women at Synex, there's Christine, there's Kareen, and a whole bunch of people that I used to work for that I got to test my talk track with. My talk track doesn't look like what I started with. So that's one of the keys, is listening to listen versus listening to respond is really, really important. Putting down your biases or any defenses you might have to hear, what is your coworker going through? What has it been like? That's the place to start, because until you can make a bit of a connection to the real boundaries that have been put up, it's hard to buy in that, okay, I need to get a sledgehammer and knock some of those down. And another really important thing that was pointed out to me that I admittedly, until I was told, I was taking it for granted. We got to recognize that in most households in the US, women are responsible for more outside of work than men. And it's not stay-at-home moms are responsible for more, it's women. So whether it's laundry, cooking, shopping, taking care of the babies, the kids, I could go on, but in general, there's a heavier load that takes a tax on anybody. So one of the things we can do is not related to work. It's think about this 50-50 thing where the dishes aren't the wife's job, it's a family job. And so many other things like that don't take a lot of effort but make a big impact to somebody's ability to fulfill themselves. So that's really important too. And something else. So I have a couple of managers on my team that I could see myself working for very, very quickly. Something they've pointed out to me repeatedly is that I have to keep unlocking the vaults. This cascade of information from CEO to EVP to me to managers to workers, and it getting skinnier all the way. It's prohibitive to everybody because you're not getting a chance to learn. And especially for women, because there's already blockers in the way. I actually need to flip the other way, and I need to, and now I do expose them to things that maybe I'm not supposed to tell them about operations or what's coming, because that's my responsibility to give women even more information in line of sight to help work through biases that are truly there. So that's a really important responsibility. Make this personal. I alluded to this before, but get to know your manager, subordinate, co-worker, friends of the family that are women in technology or other industries, asking to hear their stories and being vulnerable to say, like, hey, I understand there are biases that you're likely facing in work, but I've got no perspective, and I'd really like some perspective to hear what you go through, because the more I know, the better a proponent I can be to help. It's just that simple, and that immediately drops the man asking a woman a question vibe that often exists, where women are trained to keep their answers within a narrow lane because that's what men want to hear, and men are taught to be comfortable by keeping it in that lane. So quick side note, when I was asked to join the Synex Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Council, the panel of execs asked me, tell us what your vision of your role in this council is. And again, through a lot of help through others, I gave them 2 words, simple: discomfort and progress. If we're not uncomfortable, everybody, we can't make progress because we're not breaking norms. So if you're sweating it out hearing some of these answers and getting all kind of squirmish, awesome. Bathe in it. Don't come up with a response or a defense or why it doesn't apply to you. Embrace it as the absolute truth from a viewpoint you could never have, and you'll find all of a sudden more people want to talk to you, and you can provide guidance, help, whatever is needed. But ultimately, again, no cape, no white horse. We're there to give women what they have earned and deserve by knocking down borders and walls.
It's interesting. It kind
Yeah.
of correlates with what's going on in the IT industry, right? So you use the word discomfort, but in the IT industry, right, transformation and disruption, is a word that we all use around the corporate speak. And this really is disruption as well on a whole different level, especially with the International Women's Day theme of choose to challenge. which I think, you'll talk a little bit more about later. But it's just, I find it interesting that, social and technology aligning.
Yeah, yeah, and technology needs to move at the pace of social, because we're not there. We're at the start of a journey. I'm much more optimistic inside and out, but to think starting the work means the work is done is a big miss. Shoot, there was one thing I wanted to mention there, and I've forgotten. So we can move on and let's.
Well, I'm sure we can circle back to it on a question too.
Yeah, for sure. So let's go ahead and step forward.
Okay.
So taking action. There are so many actions we could take in these councils or small groups or friends. You'll quickly get overwhelmed because there's so many things you can and should do. And let's boil the ocean. Let's take a bite out of that whale and try to get the whole thing in our mouths at once as men and women together. And those are great intentions, but I've never seen a project of any kind succeed with that approach. And I've tried that approach here. Got the ocean onto my stove, put the burner on high, and it never boiled. So picking something to do with the support of others and input from others, a little thing, is so important. That first step forward is so much more important than even talks like this that get us fired up and get us on mission. So think about that. What can you do with where you sit? And when you do that, how do you build momentum so that the voice gets louder and there's more support? And eventually you can do that big thing or 100 little things that add up to something very meaningful to our women that we're aligned to. One of the places that we at Synex have chosen to start is around recruitment. So I've been around a while, got a big LinkedIn network, have had the fortune through the pandemic to be hiring and growing teams. And through no one's fault, Synex's sales and marketing headquarters is in Greenville, South Carolina. Great, wonderful town, to be sure, the South. When we do our recruiting, when I spread the word to my network, I had been befuddled for a few years. Like it's always white guys. I'll occasionally get a woman. I'll occasionally get, I hate the word minority because that word itself is something that white men long ago used to define themselves as not the minority. So let's say all of our diverse friends who have different backgrounds, they just weren't showing up in numbers and the quality wasn't there. And this bothered me. It's like, white guys don't have a premium on creativity, education, drive, personality, and at all. I might even argue a lot of us are at a deficit there, but that's just me being self-effacing. So what we have done, and it's so simple, when I have jobs posted now, I will intentionally go to senior to junior people in my network that I trust that do not look like me and be so blunt about the request. Hey, Rodney, I'm recruiting for this position. I generally don't get a candidate pool that's reflective of the population of our customers of the world. I want your help to help me find 1 to 10 candidates. And I do that across all sorts of, all different flavors and sizes because their networks look more like the world. So it's so simple. Then add to that, we do a lot of recruiting at Clemson because it's on our back doorstep. What we hadn't done is connect with female organized and run societies around technology. We had not connected with Black and minority groups within Clemson. So we're in places where there's lots of great talent, but because of how we look in our history, that talent isn't attracted to us. We have to go find it. And again, when we do, our hiring, outside looking in, you could say, wow, Synex is really trying to fix their problem. And we are, but not by making hires to fill a quota. We're getting exposed to people and they're getting jobs because they earn them and they deserve them, all because we broadened our network and said, let's be vulnerable and say we need help here. So That's one place. Once you get people in, whether they're straight out of college or they're coming in at the CEO level, it's education. It's these kinds of conversations. It's LinkedIn Learning. It's joining webinars by WIT, your group, following leaders like Gabriella Schuster and others that get the mission and have busted walls their whole careers, constantly looking to learn, is the only way that we can champion the advancement of women at the pace that is deserved and earned by their talent and skill. So we have to educate, and we have to provide education in any form we can, because the smarter we all are, the less these boundaries make sense at all. Like the more you learn here, the logic of the system that has been built, it makes no sense. And I'll just throw in one other point. This talk, this effort, this passion is not about the profitability and value of Synex or anybody I work for. But having said that, smart people at Harvard, Stanford, and all over the place have proven empirically when your workforce is diverse across all these mediums, especially with women, you solve problems quicker. There's more creativity. People are happy in their jobs. Your relationships externally are better because you have people that can connect to people where they are. And the least important, most important one is you're more profitable. You grow more quickly. What you earn on what you what you earn on what you sell is a greater margin because you have happy, diverse train of thought workforce where everybody finds new creativity because nobody else thinks exactly like that person on the workforce. So if you needed a financial tidbit, there's a great reason to do all this beyond the fact that it's our responsibility to really do this.
Yeah.
So any thoughts or questions from you, Christine?
I mean, there's a lot to unpack there. And I think, yeah, everything that you said at the end, it seems so when you read the studies by Gartner and IDC and McKinsey, that show the data that supports that. This isn't just people saying, oh, this would be nice. It's based in data and fact. It seems like why wouldn't everybody jump on board with that, but yet, here we are. I think I'd love to hear from people in the audience, if you don't mind, throwing into the question area, if you have ideas about how do you get that reach out. I mean, Tom mentioned, when he told me he was going to say, like, when he looked at his social network, they were mostly white men. And I thought about that, and I'm like, yeah, I bet that's true for a lot of people, that their social network is a group of people that look a lot like them. So, how do you diversify your network aside from, just the people that you work with at your company? Then you take that to bringing it into your company for HR and bringing more people in for jobs, having more people apply for jobs, having more people get jobs, which brings people in and then, further up the pipeline onto the teams. So I think that those are great points. I'd love to, hear from people here today, if they have good ideas that they can share about things that they've done, to broaden their network and to open that up. And while we're waiting for some people to do that, I think, Angela, we have another poll on work environment that maybe you can run for us.
We do. Let me launch that right now.
Great. Tom, you want to talk about this one?
Yeah, for sure. So this is, again, your name's not attached. So the hope is you give a real honest look at your current work environment. And again, this is just a fact. This is not a judgment we're looking for here at all. So are you aware of disadvantages throughout the organization, specifically for women, but you don't know how to find your voice or make change or feel like you can't? Have you spoke up a little bit, but don't see any progress? Maybe you're in that participant mode that I was in, where you don't quite have the voice to make an impact, or people aren't listening. Have you spoken up with others, and have you seen some actual progress? Or are you one of the very few lucky ones that truly provides equal opportunity for women in your workplace? So I'd love to see where everyone is in that journey. And And while you're getting your answers in, something important that I didn't mention, the notions of mentorship and sponsorship. So mentoring women in the workplace is incredibly important and our responsibility as we work on changing the environment. Deserved or not, the position I'm in, I have a lot of influence, a lot of connections. I am responsible for taking on the work of women, supporting them and ensuring that they get equal voice, equal pay, equal opportunity. There'll be a day when that's not required because we'll have solved this, but until then, it is my job to prioritize women that deserve a chance for advancement and have earned a chance for advancement over, sorry, I don't want to say over men. I would say it is my job to ensure they have equal opportunity because so much of the work is so good. All right, great poll results. And at least 50% of you need to catch up with me on LinkedIn or email because I might want to work there. And it's good to see across the spectrum. This is fairly representative of what it looks like out there. Actually, I should say that. This is kind of the flip of what I see across the industry and tech out there. That we're more skewed towards the first one rather than the last. And then,
Yeah.
Do you have another question, Christine?
Well, I just wanted to comment on the coaching and the mentoring, because I feel that as individuals, and there are a lot of men on the call today, a lot of my men friends and colleagues will ask me, what can I do? And that's one of the first things that I do recommend is start a mentoring relationship, with a woman in your company. And even if you're at an executive level and you can try to get a sponsor program going where, the men and women at the top sponsor women that are in, lower positions and try to groom them and help them come up. But even anyone can be a mentor. And the mentoring and the storytelling, right, is where I think the change really happens and occurs. And I'd love for you just to, I think what people don't realize is that the mentoring really is a two-way. It isn't one person just telling the other what to do or, one person talking and the other person listening. Mentorship is really a two-way activity. And oftentimes the mentor is learning just as much from the mentee. And I'd love for you to just share your thoughts on that. Like, so if, women have asked you to be a mentor, what were they also learning experiences for you?
Oh my goodness, yes. And thank you for bringing that up. So yeah, very specifically, I can think of a few examples now where, of course, in the process of supporting, sponsoring a few of the women that I work with, I'm learning more about the blockers that they see and encounter, which I expected, and it's good because every person has a different story. Having said that, the creativity of thoughts, the answers to issues or opportunities, the things I see coming out of these minds are all different than what I thought, and different than largely what I'll get from any of the men that I sponsor. And it's because that different perspective, just the way that, men and women's minds in a very generic way work differently. And getting exposed to that helps me want to learn more, absolutely helps me be a better leader. And to your point, the idea of this flat organization is so overused. But I'm so lucky in our work group because the person that just started out of college all the way up to my boss, there's open dialogue because all of us none of us have the answers, and across gender and generation, all these different perspectives are incredibly important because our customers have them. So yeah, it's a great point. I often feel guilty because I feel like I'm coming out with more than I'm putting in those conversations. And it makes me giggle a little bit because it's like, holy crap, these apologies for the language, these I have so much more to learn, and I learn every time I talk. So yeah, great point, Christine.
Good, thank you. That's great. I'm so glad you shared that. Do you want me to move to the next stage?
Yeah, let's get into our last step here. So hopefully you've enjoyed this chat. Hopefully you're giving feedback or reach out to any of us to further the chat, challenge the chat, all that, because starting is the hardest part. And this was a good broadcast of information. Hopefully you enjoyed it, but it's deserving of dialogue for all of us. So getting started. Today was a great step. You may already be started based on a lot of the poll answers, and that is awesome. If you haven't started, you have to decide to commit. I am committed to changing this in whatever sphere of influence I have, be it 6 feet wide or 600 miles wide or worldwide. I'm in. This is part of my responsibility. I'm going to do things. I'm going to be uncomfortable and make others uncomfortable because it has to happen unless my environment is perfect. So it's an easy thing to say, but you're going to need to start reading. You're going to need to start attending more webinars. You are going to need to become an incredibly active listener that seeks out others to help you with perspectives you don't have. And this sounds funny, but you're going to have to bathe in your discomfort. Christine and Kareen put a little bead of sweat on my forehead talking through a couple things and getting ready for this. And it is so energizing to realize, like, oh, no, I don't have to defend here. They're telling me some stuff I don't know, and I'm uncomfortable with it, so I'm learning. So love that discomfort. And if you're in the tech industry, you're probably used to change anyway. So this is another change, just probably a more important one than the next version of Visual Studio. Not probably, most certainly. So that's the educate yourself, and self-evaluation is really important here. There are a number of papers and books out there about men as allies. Hit me up anywhere and I'll post some on LinkedIn after we get done here. But kind of like the White Fragility book, read things, make you sweat, that you want to put down and stop reading because it's so uncomfortable, then you go back to. There are a lot of other people out there that can help educate us. And then you've got to understand the topography of your organization. Where can you affect change? Where are the pockets of resistance? How can you solicit support to help break through some of those pockets, large or small? And a lot of that's focused around HR. So often the best advocates for this kind of change are in our human resources groups at our companies. Also, they might have not as loud a voice. So lean in there anywhere. Build a coalition, be the sponsor of it, be a small part of it, be behind the curtain, but find things you can do. Back to that little things. Find a pebble you can kick down the beach is step one. All right. And then being a challenger. Again, difficult but so important. And by that, I mean you actively participate in stopping biases. If you have a woman coworker who is not getting equal airtime in a meeting, whose ideas are not being heard or even discussed, it is your job to say, hey, wait a minute. Why are we passing over this idea? There's some real merit to it. Or why are we passing over this idea? It's brilliant. So speaking up to stop the silencing, stop the bias. If you're in a position to hire, might not like to hear this, but no, it is your responsibility to make sure that any woman you hire is making at least as much as any man in the role. A lot of women will be happy to get, let's just say $40,000 a year for a job that a man is getting $50,000 a year for, because we're so conditioned to say, oh, there's a less capable person and I can get at a bargain. Flawed thinking, flawed from the start. More capable person that we should be correcting the pay gap on so that it no longer exists where we can directly influence if you're hiring. So these are tough things. But when you do them, when I said a few of these things out loud, I all of a sudden found like, holy crap, sorry, again, there's the language. But a lot of people want to educate me and tell me why I'm not completely correct. So be brave, stand up, take a risk, and changing jobs is never an easy thing. But if you're in an organization where you decide you cannot make impact, decide how important it is for you, and then maybe seek out other organizations that have challenges but are doing things to make a difference, because this contribution to us, while we all need our paychecks, us working to contribute here will ripple out for generations ahead of us, and maybe get to that place where I don't have female friends, I don't have Black friends, I don't have Black coworkers. I don't have women as coworkers. I don't have Asian women as coworkers. I have people that I work with, and there's no more qualifiers. It sounds a little silly and aspirational, but seriously, think about that. What if you didn't over or undervalue every person by attaching labels to them? It's pretty cool. And on the days that I'm able to do it, I feel really damn good and meetings go pretty well. And on the days I trip on myself, these days, someone gives me a little reminder behind the scenes and I get a chance to improve. So I'll stop there. And if, Christine, if there's anything that you want to throw in or ask me, all yours.
Yeah, I do have one more question, but while I'll ask you that while Angela's running the last question, the poll question for everybody, which is really a write-in. So if Angela, you want to share that up, and then people can start to type some stuff in. And also we have just about 10 minutes left, and we'd love for Tom to answer your questions. Nothing, is off limits. You're not, again, we know nobody will be named with your questions, so feel free to be honest. And while all of that is happening, Tom, you talk about speaking up, and I do think that that is really important. You know, the International Women's Day theme of Choose to Challenge is really all about that, right? We're trying to encourage people to say now is the time, to call out, the inequities. And one of the things that I mention to people too is to look on your team. When you're in meetings, I know there was an executive at Microsoft who told me, and this really just has stuck with me, ever since. Actually, Kate Johnson, the president of the US, and, she had told me that she went to a partner meeting and she walked into the room and there were 16 men sitting around, a board table. And she walked in and, she asked them, what is wrong with this picture? And they all looked at her like, I don't know what. And then, she went out in the hall and she grabbed a woman and she brought the woman in and had the woman sit down with her. And she's like, now, do you see? And so, I use that example to explain to people, like when you're in meetings and you're on teams, look around and look for diversity. And in cases where you don't see it, what would you advise people, what is the best way to handle it? We don't want to have rioting and, people, misbehaving with the challenge, but how would you coach somebody, to sort of bring that level of awareness to their organization?
Yeah, great question with easy, hard to do answers. So I'll answer that question second. Going to give you one other bit of info first. So what I'm about to share is not credit to me. This is the environment in our stellar team, our cloud team inside of Synex that I was lucky enough to join. 65% of our leadership team, female. And it's not because we corrected things or made some strategic hires to fix an issue. It's because the environment that a gentleman named Rob Moyer built and forced everybody into, I shouldn't say forced, would only bring in people who would adopt it, is that everybody's an equal, the best talent gets promoted. And so we're kind of living the dream here. So in terms of advice about how to address things, if you can, be blunt and ask if there's a group in your company that has good female representation, good women that have gotten what they've deserved. Ask to be a part of those meetings. Ask to listen in as an educational experience on hearing how meetings can go when they're diverse. It'll feel awkward, but when you get in there and you hear the conversations going on and the different mindsets going on and the bouncing around that happens instead of kind of universal funnel agreement on like, yep, that's the best path. Tried it 9 times and it didn't work, but we're all locked in because it's going to work the 10th time, as opposed to, hey guys, no. So that's number one. The second is, if you're in a position of hiring, broaden your network in whatever way you can, because you're going to find out very quickly there are amazing candidates that are not white males out there. And so you can influence by bringing people in. You can influence by sponsoring to help people move up so it doesn't look that way. And quite honestly, a direct discussion with your manager, your manager's manager, HR, to say like, I think this is an issue for us because, and use any of the things we've talked about today and say, how can I help change this? I'm asking you for help. So you got to be bold. And the last thing I'll throw in, then I'm going to stop and get to that question, is talk about getting emboldened to take risks. 5-6 months ago, I would not send an email to our CEO and presidents and leader of HR with a lot of harsh description about certain pockets and what people are feeling at our company. Because while I'm emboldened to speak, I'm a champion. But I also don't want to limit my career and do something stupid. Being a part of these committees has so emboldened me not just to understand more of the real challenges, but my responsibility as somebody who is lucky enough to be in a leadership position. It's my responsibility to be as loud as I can for all of them, because right now their voices are drowned out. This is not a white man saving anyone. This is a white man using his position to give a bigger megaphone so that eventually I can step out of the way. And so that email went to the CEO and his leadership team, because we have to address some things. We're going to lose great people. So take some risks, people. And if you lose your job because of taking risks, email me. I'll help.
Oh, and you probably don't want to be there long term, right? We have 2 questions from the audience that I'd love to share with you. The first one says, is there anything specifically different or helpful to understand being an ally in the technology space? For example, anything different than outside of this industry?
Oops, and I apologize, Christine. I was reading the one in my Q&A channel, which is a different one.
Okay.
Could you hit me with it again really quick?
Sure, no problem. Is there anything specifically different or helpful to understand being an ally in the technology space? For example, anything different than outside of this industry?
Yeah, great question. And I would say quite a bit. Our industry, no matter what part you're in, moves at light speed compared to most other industries, which is an awesome opportunity and a constriction. We move so fast that sticking with what we think we know about structure and advancement propagates more quickly the very barriers that we're trying to break down. And so there can be a disadvantage because of the pace we move, that embracing true change and changing is really hard to do when you're trying to push your 50th release out in the last 6 months. Having said that, that very thing creates tremendous opportunity. We all have turnover. We have people advancing their careers. We all have an easier ability to connect to so many people that are so smart in forums like this. It gives us every opportunity to find awesome talent that's going to make us better, that just happens to be a woman. So break the norms, push people to say, we're better if we don't all think alike. And there's a whole lot of men in this room.
Awesome. All right, 2 more. So we'll try to keep them. We have 5 minutes. We'll try to keep them succinct. The first one says, where should the line be drawn between celebrating achievement and acknowledging the shame that achievement is getting to where we should have been all along?
I love that question. And so the first thing I'm going to say, if you're an ally, you have full permission to not carry shame. Shame is a tough emotion. We can be embarrassed, but carrying that for things either you haven't done or that generations before didn't is destructive to you and your psyche, and women can see it, which can be read as like, I'm so glad you got promoted. Okay, you're not supportive. Like, no, you're carrying shame. So knock it off the table for yourself. It's a useless emotion that will drain you. And to your point, I think a little bit of extra celebration right now is a good thing, as long as it's genuine, because celebrating change, no matter how late to the game, is important. It's important to build support. It's important for people to see that change. The hope is, though, in a year, that extra celebration is a little smaller, and then the ultimate goal is we get to the point when we're celebrating a promotion. No tags, no qualifiers. So it's a great question. Celebrate a little bit extra, keep it genuine, and then as it becomes a norm, embrace it as that.
Right. Okay, great. Last question. Clarifying question for Tom. Read the bath in the discomfort comment. How did you learn to be mindful of the discomfort and the instinct to be defensive or fix it?
Oh my gosh, great question. Can we have an extra half hour, please? I'll try to do this in a minute. Man, I so love that. Yeah, I've got strong defensive capabilities. It's hard not to yank the drawbridge up when I feel attacked, even when I'm not being attacked. So first thing is force yourself into a mindset. Do not let yourself formulate responses while you're hearing someone talk. It's natural for all of us, especially if we're defensive. Force yourself to listen, absorb, and ignore any other emotions going on. It takes a lot of practice. It's like meditation. It doesn't work the first time. So that is number one that I would say. Man, I've got so much more I want to say on that.
We might need a follow-up session. What do you think?
Yeah, I'd love to. And I got one other thing to throw in there as well. The other side of that is my or your passion and emotion. How do you convey that without dropping a hammer, without displaying your emotions in such a way that you're not heard? That is hard. Expect to do it wrong a bunch. And then don't carry the shame. Give yourself permission that it turns out you're not perfect either, and learn from it. And I'm not suggesting me, but do some reading and find other people on. There's some good TED Talks on this who present themselves well, and we can all fake it until we make it. If I go with the right mindset, I can suppress all the icky things that want to come out, or my anger of the situation. I can suppress those to be a level-headed advocate, and you'll get further when you get there. But failure is an option as long as you learn from it and keep going and talk to other people. Me, anyone you want. Hey, I stink at this. Can you help me? Sure. I stink at this. Can you help me back? Hopefully.
I love it. I love it. Oh my gosh. Well, we are at time and it went so fast. And I agree. I think we should have made this one 90 minutes because there's a lot to unpack here. But let's put a pin in maybe doing a part 2 as you develop and we develop and the world develops. You know, we may have some additional things to talk about. Tom, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart on behalf of the WIT Network for, you know, coming here and being vulnerable and being honest and taking that hard look at yourself as you did and bathing in the discomfort. But you are an amazing champion, and you're doing it, and you're impacting. Hopefully you've impacted about 70 plus something people today, and in every day that you sponsor women, you mentor women, you coach women, you stand up for women, you help your daughter, you know, you help the women in your community. You're such a bright light. So thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it. I hope everyone enjoyed it. And you did have some book recommendations. I'll see if Kareen can include them in the follow-up email where we thank everybody for joining so that we can share that with them.
Perfect.
Thank
My
you.
pleasure.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks for joining us. Have a great day.
Thanks, everybody.